Our next speaker is an eminent herpetologist and evolutionary biologist. He is professor of biology at Eckerd College. He tells me he's just about to retire, or at least retire from teaching for quite some time. I'm sorry to hear that. You'll be missed in that role. Peter Meylan.
I have to correct Lou. It's sabbatical from here on out. So I'm not teaching any more classes, but Annie and I keep saying that we have to retire so that we can get some work done. I'm going to read to you from a book of taxonomy. So how many of you know what taxonomy is? This is Crocodilians, Tuatara, and Turtle Species of the World. It was compiled by Wayne King and one of his students, a guy named Russ Burke. And I think they did it, they wrote it just after Dr. Carr had died in 1987, and it was dedicated to Dr. Carr's memory. There's a nice thing in here that you need to read that Wayne wrote about Dr. Carr. There's a very nice piece in here that you need to read by Gene Mortimer. It's entitled Archie Carr, Its Conservationist. But since this was a book of taxonomy, somebody had to write about Archie Carr as taxonomist, and that was my job. So I'm going to read to you something that I wrote about Dr. Carr, mostly because I think that it summarizes his great contributions to the herpetology of Florida. I know many of you know him as a sea turtle biologist, but his reach was huge in the entire field of herpetology. To many an aspiring herpetologist contemplating some problem in Florida herpetology and asking his sound advice, I heard Archie Carr comment, "Haven't you read the classics?" That was how he rightfully referred to his own work. And for the period in his career before sea turtles became a major focus, Archie covered a great deal of now classical taxonomic ground, mostly herpetological, but also ichthyological. So ichthyology, fish, you guys know that, right? Archie published some 30 herpetological and 5 ichthyological contributions before focusing on marine turtles in the early 1950s. Much of his work forms the basis of our current understanding of the taxonomy of the testudinoid family Emydidae. Those are the New World pond turtles. The remainder of his herpetological work addresses problems dealing with the unique fauna of Florida. His ichthyological contributions include Keys to the Fishes of Florida and the first comprehensive treatment of the fishes of any Pacific drainage of Honduras. Archie's earliest work on turtle systematics began with a long battle that is still, perhaps it is, there's no doubt about it, the thorniest problem in North American turtle systematics, the relationships of cooters. So these are Pseudomys consina, Pseudomys floridana. I fight with people about these names every year. So members of the genus Pseudomys. It was a problem to which he often returned, even into the sea turtle years. He started by recognizing the close relationship of the species that we now call consina and floridana. He later identified several new subspecies. He named Pseudomys consina swaniensis, which is a name that I still use, and Pseudomys floridana peninsularis, which is a name that I still use. He recognized special relationships, among others, the mobile slider. His method was to inject biology into the typological treatment of turtle taxa left by his predecessors. He employed his revised series of named forms and considered sexual dimorphism and differential levels of reproductive isolation between taxa. He proposed the possibility that a Rosenkreis existed for the Consina floridana group in the southeast. And I think he's right. Although his taxonomic work for the complex does not survive totally, it did lead directly to the system of names that we now use for the group. We still use all of the subspecies names he employed in his 1938 review. So his methods that he applied to the floridana consina complex proved successful in Archie's work with other emydid turtles, so other kinds of pond turtles. He worked on Pseudomys ruberventris, which are the red-bellied turtles. He worked on Trachomys scripta, which are the red-eared sliders. and he worked on malaclemes, which are the diamondback terrapins. He also worked on the same group of turtles, Trachemes, in the West Indies. So Dr. Carr's work in turtle taxonomy extended to the West Indies emydids in the form of 3 papers with Thomas Barber. In 1938, they described Pseudomys melonii from Great Anagua. In 1941, they published a monographic treatment of all West Indian terrapins, and in 1941, they described Pseudomys granti from Grand Cayman Island. Archie's description of the wonderfully dimorphic graptomes from the Apalachicola River, Carr and Marchand, 1942, was a tribute to Barber, his mentor. So Dr. Carr named Graptomes barberi, that some of you may know. This first-hand knowledge of the most difficult of problems in North American turtle taxonomy, the genus Pseudomys in the broadest sense, and his mastery of systematics of marine turtles were undoubtedly the principal features which allowed him to produce his unrivaled 1952 Handbook of Turtles, which represents the peak of his work on turtle taxonomy. Although turtles were a major focus of his work from the beginning, Archie revealed his interest in all aspects of the herpetofauna of Florida. He published a series of papers on Florida endemics, so things just found in Florida. Stylosoma, it's a short-tailed snake, only found in Florida. Hadiotriton is a cave salamander found in Florida and southern Georgia. The Lathea obsoleta williamsi is the Gulf hammock rat snake, only found in a small area of Florida. Nerodia fasciata taeniata is an endangered salt marsh water snake that's on this coast of Florida. And Rhinura floridana, it's an endemic worm lizard, a lizard that's just found in Florida and nowhere else in the world. He documented such varied topics as the songs of Florida frogs in 1934 and the habits of cottonmouths in 1936. His PhD dissertation, published in 1940 under the modest title, A Contribution to the Herpetology of Florida, was the first such comprehensive treatment for the Southeast and still rates as one of the most community-oriented statewide treatments available anywhere. This work and his 1955 Guide to Reptiles and Amphibians and Freshwater Fishes of Florida, written with Coleman Goyne, remain the foundation of current understanding of Florida herpetology. To those setting out to study Florida herpetology and the relationships of emydid turtles, my first advice would be read the classics. Thank you.